What's up guys, NepentheZ here and welcome back to another FC25 video where today we are going to discuss a new addition that came to the game this year and give a little bit more detail and understanding about it, and that is roles. That is right, EA introduced FC IQ this year and along with it came roles, and generally speaking they didn't give any information on the roles really. You know, there's some like little tidbits and there's some like very vague information in the team management section about what roles do, and they don't really give an understanding as to whether or not they have a lot of value. So, you know, here we've got Kai Havertz as advanced 4++, and all it says is a versatile attacker who usually stays close to the opposition's defensive line, but opens them up for passes in the build-up, makes runs in behind the back line. And, you know, they told us that Role Plus is good, Role Plus is world class. You know, you could have like a role but no plus or plus, and then you can have no role. But they really didn't give much else beyond that. As the game cycle started to develop this year, you know, we're into December, nearly into January right now, they still haven't really come up with anything for us until recently. But one thing that they did this year that made me think that they are super valuable was gatekeep them in evolutions and promos. And it is very, very rare, even now, that you will find a single player that has 2 Role Pluses. Some of them have got them because of like the upgrades. Some Thunderstruck players have got 2. I think Ashley Cole, for example, has got Wingback ++ and Fullback ++. And some of them have just been given 2 in certain promos. So right here, Little got given Playmaker ++ at centre mid and cam, and then has a Role Plus in every other area. And so I started to get a feeling that roles were so much more valuable than EA were letting on. And I started applying more roles to my players and getting them in position. And then EA did a podcast, or the Foot Weekly podcast, a couple of weeks ago. You can find it on Spotify or I believe on YouTube as well. And one of the gameplay developers, Tom Cleffy, was on that podcast talking about lots of different things, but one of the big things that he covered off quite specifically was roles. And he gave some information that blew my mind, and we're going to talk about it today a little bit in a bit more depth, give you guys a bit more of a context and understanding of not only what roles do, and we still don't know what they do, but more about how important they are, but also about how different chem styles can really help influence the way your players play. Probably for the first time ever, they're more dynamic than ever before. And if you'll notice on my team right here, I used this team, well, actually I had Erdegaard in here. I don't have him right now, but I had Erdegaard where Little is, and I had Smith Thunderstruck where Jesus is, and I had just pretty any random striker actually at striker. I think I had Robin van Persie here, so I had Van Persie, Smith, and Erdegaard in that front 3. Otherwise, this was a team that I got 11 wins with last week. And what you notice about it is that other than Saliba, because I just can't bring myself to change an anchor off of him, nobody, actually that's not true, McCabe has as well an anchor. Nobody has pace play styles. I've got Sentinels across my back line. I've got a Guardian on Jorginho. I've got a Basic on Little. I've got Finisher on both Jesus and Havertz, and I had Finisher on my other 2 strikers as well. And I've got Deadeye on Bukayo Saka. And I want to tell you why first, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty of what it actually means. So it transpires, and we're going to go through the facts and the details in a moment, a bit deeper. But it transpires that for defenders, defensive awareness is a really key stat, and for attackers, attack positioning is a really key stat with the way that they work within roles. And so I looked at what chem styles give the most defensive awareness boost and the most attack positioning boost. And would you believe, and this is again something that's like almost like it shows how valuable this information is. There's only 2 playstyles that give 8 defensive awareness. It is Sentinel and it is Guardian. There's also only 2 playstyles that give 8 attack positioning. It is Finisher and it is Deadeye. The reason why I really like Basic as well, and why I've got Basic on Kim Little, is because it gives 4 defensive and 4 attack positioning. And it's the only chem style that boosts both of them. And I also think that other than a couple of maybe nuanced stats like volleys and penalties potentially, it kind of boosts like all of the key stats. And so I really think Basic is really, really good. And I've really enjoyed Little Kim so far. 23 games on her. I think she's absolutely brilliant. So what I did was basically put chem styles on players to try and get them up as close to 99 defensive awareness and 99 attack positioning as possible, based on the information that we're going to talk about here today. As I said, I could easily put a Sentinel on William Saliba as well and get him up that extra bit, and I might. I've got Calafiori up to 93 defensive awareness. I've got Ashley Cole up to 97 defensive awareness. Jorginho with that Guardian Chem style boosts his dribbling massively and his defensive awareness and interceptions really nicely as well, and his passing is already so good. And then Bukayo Saka, I mean, I score so many finesse shots with him, 134 goals in 141 games, and it's probably about 120 finesse shots. And a lot of it comes from great positioning, being in the right place at the right time, and then in general, the really good shot power and long shots. And then we looked at Little already, but McCabe's an interesting one because I gave her an anchor because her defensive awareness is already so high that it wasn't, I could only gain an extra 3, which might be worth it in any sense. But I have no troubles playing with this team, guys. I'm in Division 2 now in Rivals. I did get promoted to Division 2. I just went 5-1 in qualifiers. I went 11 wins last weekend in champs, and I have tailored my team towards roles and chem styles that improve roles. And guys, as I put my broken headset on for the first time in a long time, if you like this content, if you're enjoying what you're watching here today, I can absolutely do a deep dive on roles and how they interchange perfectly. But I've got a lot of information to cover off today, so let's get into it. The first thing that we're going to look at, guys, and this is the podcast here. We've got Ben, the host, with Josh XL's editor. Josh is actually editing this very video as well, a host on the podcast too. And Tom Kalefi, who, as you can see there, is the EAFC gameplay producer. And the first thing we're talking about is how tactics didn't really mean much before, but I don't think people understand how powerful they are, because he talks here about how only 30% of people used default tactics last year, including in the top divisions. Let's have a listen.
I'll be honest, a lot of people didn't even use tactics. Top divisions, we had stats that over 30% of people use default tactics in top divisions, which is crazy if you ask me in previous games. So it's like, imagine you're one of the best players in the world in our game and you don't even touch the system.
And it was interesting to hear him talk. They have the data, but it was interesting to hear him talk about that, because there is something to be said for no tactics being a tactic. The default tactics are still a tactic, but it is very true. And what it comes down to a lot of, and you're going to hear me talk about this side of things quite a lot today, is that people follow the pro meta when they are not pro players, and it makes them think that it's the best way to play the game because it's what the pros know. But the pros only know the best way they know how to play the game. They don't necessarily know how the best way to play the game is. And what I mean by that is, last year and the year before, Power Shot Plus came last year, but even the year before and the year before, I've been hitting Power Shot, green timed volleys, for a couple of years. And I could absolutely swear blind they was the most efficient way to score from about 40 yards out, so long as you had that little bit of room to pop the ball up. Yet you never saw anybody do it. Then this year, somebody scored a sick goal with Valverde, I think it was, that set it away, that I saw on Twitter, and everybody started spamming power shots. And it's a case of they didn't know they were so good because nobody wants to try and test them in a competitive environment. So they do the most efficient thing they know, the most efficient, or the most effective tactic available, the meta. And it's fascinating to me that there's so many people in the top divisions last year that didn't touch tactics, where it might have even helped make them way better. The thing that I think EA do a terrible job of, though, is explaining actually how they work and with each other.
You guys mentioned on the pod a few weeks back, a lot of the roles, they can't be seen in isolation. And I know the heat map the activity map, it's not really a heat map, and some of the other things that we show on the screen, they are kind of in isolation, but the player roles complement each other a lot. So a lot of the times you notice if you have a specific role and another role, they're kind of gonna interact with each other differently. And if you have another one, so I think those combinations, which are really tricky, bear in mind, but those combinations, I think it's one of the things that people kind of haven't picked up in everything else.
Something that's really interesting for me, what he talks about there, is the fact that roles are not like they are what was the word that they work interchangeably, but the wording that he used was roles are not in isolation to each other. And it's really, again, it's something that's really fascinating because, you know, he talked there about how many like combinations there are. We learned a lot last year as the year went on how valuable certain playstyles had in combination to each other. For example, having Flair and Finesse Shot Plus, or even Finesse Shot, gave a different animation to a Finesse Shot than a player that did not have Flair and Finesse Shot or Finesse Shot Plus. And, you know, there's other certain combinations, like, you know, of things working in tandem together within roles, within playstyles. But it's a lot easier to pick up on because you have a visual understanding. When you hit a finesse shot, you can see it. When you hit a power shot, you can see it. When you do a trickster fake shot, you can see the different animations that you get. When you know, when a player has relentless, you can see the fact they've just got more stamina. When somebody has inside forward plus plus and they're playing with an advanced forward plus plus, you can't see it. You do you know what I mean? Like, we don't actually know. If I have Bukayo Saka on inside 4++, and then I have, let's say, Jesus, because he's on his side, on advanced 4++, what would be the difference if it was Poacher ++ instead? Where would they stand? How would they interact together? How would it interact with the midfielders and the attackers? And this is where I think a lot of people get caught out on this game. If you run 2 poachers and 2 inside forwards on attack, do you think all 4 of those players will be able to make the optimal runs into space? The tactic has to have some element of football sense, and it's true. You see a lot of people run inside forwards on both wingers, and I've got one on Saka as well, and it's crazy because inside forwards, if you have an inside forward on your left wing as well, or your left foot midfielder, you've effectively got 4 people occupying the same areas, and the space is going to, again, it's going to be important, right? And the roles to do with it are going to be important. Bukayo Saka, for me, has started scoring an insane amount of more goals, and this is where roles are like working within each other. I put Ben White to attacking wing back because I had Mike on there on loan for a few games. I've kept Ben White on attacking wing back because of what it did to Saka when I had Mike on there. When I had Mike on and he was pushing up the field more, Saka pushed inside and a bit deeper, a lot quicker. And I actually found Saka to be right on the edge of the box, which is exactly where I want him for those finesse shots all of the time. And I've ended up scoring an insane amount of goals with him because he gets into that inside forward spot a lot quicker. And when Ben White used to be on fullback, which he was on before, it took Saka used to occupy the right-hand side space. And then in the final phase of play, he would move in and be there for the shot. But because Ben White's there pushing into that space, Saka moves in. And it's one of those ones where, again, I think it would do EA a good job. I think they would do well to explain to people how they interchange with each other, because when Tom says 30% of people in the top divisions didn't even use tactics, and that was crazy to him. The reason why they didn't use tactics is because you don't explain how the tactics work. Like, you give a vague understanding, but after that, it's about trying to figure it out yourself. And these are so detailed and so in-depth and so nuanced that it would take somebody like years and years and years to be able to like almost reverse engineer exactly how every tactic works within itself. And so people just go off of a feel. And that, again, is exactly why people copy pros tactics, because they feel like they're the best ones. Another thing that Josh says, which is actually quite interesting because it's true to me and it might be true to you as well. He says, you can tack on here if you want the D-pad. I think people saw it had changed and have just ignored it this year. I have completely ignored the D-pad this year, other than sometimes doing an offside trap and sometimes doing team press. I almost never use the D-pad. He says, but it's super powerful. The focus menu of attacking, default, and defensive makes a huge difference and only changes a player's focus, which is this. Nope, let me put her back there. This here. Attack, roaming. I don't know if there's a difference between attack and roaming versus a balanced attack or whatever. But yeah, if you're holding on to a lead and you set your focus to defending all of a sudden, if I had Ashley Cole and I set my D-pad tactic to attack, well, he doesn't have it here, but if I set it to defend, all of a sudden he hangs back way deeper. It makes a big difference. He says, into the meat and potatoes, what is the difference between out of position, which is, let me show you. let's put a player in at CDM that is not a CDM. So if we now go into the tactics, notice how Martinelli's already got the exclamation mark on him. If we go into the tactics screen here, go to edit tactic, and then go to player roles, it says here, player out of position. Role and focus are simplified. To enhance them, pick a player with this position as one of their preferred ones. A lot of people think this has not too much meaning, and it didn't used to. Now it really does. So what is the difference between out of position, no role, which is something like what Ben White has right here? He's in the right position, but he doesn't have the role for like he just doesn't have what's there. You know, no role plus or whatever. Role plus and role plus, and this is where it gets really interesting and why it caused me to change my chem styles.
Going back to their defensive positioning or taking a long time to attack, especially when the ball kind of changes possession really quickly. That is due to the plus and the plus. The more pluses you have, I guess, the faster that transition will be. It's almost like the player is spacing out. Not that it is. It will just kind of take longer a little bit to transition. And I think people don't realize that sometimes they say, oh, but my player's not doing anything. Well, because you're probably playing without a role plus.
In this instance right here, he's talking about the transition between attack and defense and players moving between attack and defense when possession turns over. And he mentions how somebody with a role plus effectively does their job better and quicker. And that is where the in tandem with defensive awareness and attack positioning comes in. If you win the ball back, or let's say you lose the ball, right? Let's say you lose the ball and you've got players in a role plus, they recognize a lot quicker the fact that they have to get back to where they go. And when we listen to this next part right here,
the player's analyzing all the runs. Like there's 10 different spaces to run to. And then they will rank the run. They might do the second best run because they don't see that the best run. You know, so there's a lot of subtleness and nuances.
The more you've got, the better they are with runs. If they have 10 runs to choose from, if they don't have the role, they won't always select the best run. If they have the role plus, they will do a better job of selecting the better run. And if they have a role plus, they will choose the best run almost every time, depending on attack positioning. And it was really interesting to hear that, because straight away it kind of connected some missing links for me. And I'm not saying that this game doesn't otherwise have gameplay issues, right? There are gameplay issues with this game that this can't resolve and won't resolve. But think about the way you play this game and how sometimes your player makes that sick run and sometimes they don't. Sometimes your player is always in the right position and sometimes they're not. And then think about whether or not you have them in a role plus and how much attack positioning you have on them. And that is why I switched to giving at the very least a role plus to every one of my players, but trying for role pluses and giving attack positioning and defensive awareness to my players as well, because defensive awareness makes them pick up on the defending quicker, get into position quicker. And people kept asking me, wouldn't you rather have more pace than more positioning? And the answer is no, because the better positioning counteracts the need for pace. So I was running some teams with like 38 pace Mangala in defense, and he was just fine. Like, did he get burnt every now and then? Yes, he did, but he was just fine. And so it started making me think, if you actually found a tactic that you liked, and then you had role plus players in that tactic with high attack positioning, you would be able to very consistently attack in the same ways that you want, because you would have a way higher chance of your players just being in the right position and the right place and making the right runs all the time. And although he's only in a role plus, Saka is the one that I've focused on the most for this, because I've got him set as an inside forward, and I kept like looking at, when does he move into that role? How quickly does he do it? Where on the field does he move into that inside forward role? And what other things influenced whether or not he did or not? And it was so obvious. It was so obvious that he would just find that space in the right spot all the time. And if I could show you a heat map from him or an activity map, it would just be on the edge of the box all the time. So now when I'm attacking, unless I'm on a counter attack and I'm building up fast, if I'm building up the play slowly, or I'm just in a bit of like a good amount of possession, I know where he's going to be all of the time. And it's so refreshing because it makes it really easy to play with him.
No way. So like the plus and the plus plus influences a lot of different things.
So what he said there, guys, just don't gloss over that again, because I think sometimes he's saying things and almost skips past it because it's super powerful information. The role plus and the role plus pluses influences a lot of things, and one of them is the attributes.
Things. And one of them is the attribute. So before, like, we only use attacking positioning or defensive awareness to do stuff.
So there you go. Before, they only used to use attacking positioning and defensive awareness to do stuff.
Let's say you're going to maintain your defensive line. We mostly use the defensive awareness. You're going to find a space. Let's use your attacking positioning to position yourself. But now we're using the plus and the plus plus with it.
So now they're using that with it, not instead of, or not, it's not part of it. They are now in combination. So attack positioning, defensive awareness, and roles are working in tandem with how well players attack and defend. And again, I just want to preface, I'm not going to say that you're going to go and put some role plus pluses on and get your attack positioning up and defensive awareness up, and all of a sudden you're going to be like a 15-0 player. It's like there's still like some element of like skill has to be involved there, but it should make your game feel, you should just feel in more control of what you're doing if you apply my logic of the defensive awareness and attack positioning.
In a sense, like let's say to position in the defensive line or to do a run, even if you have like 99 attacking positioning, but you have a regular role, that almost means that you would have a lower attacking positioning to do that run.
Right.
We're not reducing attacking positioning. It's just that now the attacking positioning might be just 80% of that formula.
So he talks to you about formulas, and this is where it got me to change everything. You can have 99 positioning, but if you're not in a role, you're not out of position, but not in a role, you don't get the full boost. You like the amount of formula that attack positioning gives within that role or within the calculation is less than if you was in a role plus plus.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not 100% of that formula now. So I think it's still important to have a high attribute because it's still the majority of a lot of the formulas and a lot of the things that we use to dictate the runs, the support areas, defensive line, marking. It's still the attribute, but the role plus and the plus plus kind of plays a huge chunk of it too.
And again, this is where I think Tom gave away not too much information because EA like approved the podcast, but it fascinated me how the words he used with, the attribute is still important, but the role plays a huge part of the defensive line, of how quickly players in like transition between attack and defense, with the runs that they make, with the support that they offer. And it just made me think, God damn, would I just be a better player if my players were just in the place I expected them to be all of the time? Not some of the time, not every now and then, not here and there, all of the time. And again, like there is a nuance to it, right? Like you're still going to lose games. Other people will still have roles and role plus pluses. You still might face a better player or just have a bad connection or some input delay that like completely negates this. But I can give you some assurance that since I started playing with players on role pluses, role plus pluses, and improving attack positioning and defensive awareness, my wins have significantly increased in champs and rivals, which is brilliant. And it doesn't like, obviously like the role itself matters. Like if you want, for example, if you've got a centre mid and you want them to be a playmaker, but they have box to box plus plus, and so you're like, okay, I want to put them in box to box plus plus because I want to get the best out of the role. I want a plus plus. Just keep in mind that they are going to also track back. So if you've got somebody, now little Kim's not a great example of it because she's got high defensive awareness as well. But if you've got a midfielder that's got really high attack positioning and really terrible defensive awareness, let's say Bukayo Saka, and you set him to a role whereas like, a winger and you've got him set to defend, he's not going to defend very well, and he's not going to transition very well because his defensive awareness is absolutely terrible. So, and he doesn't have a role plus, in that. He's only got the role plus. So making sure you pick roles that make sense to how you want to play, getting them as plus, and then boosting defensive awareness and attack positioning should see you have a massive improvement in how you play this game. And then what we're about to listen to now, guys, is Tom giving like a percentage modifier of what the stat does within the roles.
Out of position is probably like a half of what the regular row is. I think the out of position is probably like a half of what the regular row is.
So a half of what the regular role is. Now, again, this is half in terms of its importance in the formula, but I try and just look at it, take it in face value of like, so if you've got 99 attack positioning on your left mid, but it's a striker, they're going to get actually 50 attack positioning. And it explains so much. Sometimes I'll sub on players like that are out of position. I'll sub on like, I don't know, Ethan Nwaneri, who's a cam for me, and sub him on at centre mid, and he's just useless. And I'm like, how is he so bad? He's got good stats. He's got good roles. He's got good skill moves and weak foot. He's got good play styles. How is he so bad? He's out of position, which means where he is positioned is always going to be in the wrong spot, or at least more often than not going to be in the wrong spot.
So let's say if the regular row is 80, the out of position is like 40. So like the out of position is really a big penalty. And then kind of the row plus, it would be almost like 95% of what it was in the past. And then the row plus is actually better than it was. So I would say it's like 110 or something, or 115 or 120. It actually makes players improve to what it was before.
And so again, if that right there, what he talked about, the percentages of how important roles were with positioning, defensive and offensive, was why I changed everything. Because I've now got, for example, this Kai Havertz, I've got him as advanced forward plus, and I've got him on 99 positioning, which means in theory, he's on 120-ish, maybe 115 positioning. So his positioning is just much better than it ever has been or ever would be before. Now, of course, you can have players with high positioning, but really low pace or really low physical. So once you've got the ball, really low dribbling, maybe bad play styles and things like that. So once you've got the ball to them, or once they're in the right place, then it's still something to do after that. But generally speaking, like, I'm going to show you some like proof as well in a moment. But generally speaking, like having the good positioning or good defensive awareness is a game changer. And the way I want to like give proof around that is with a game that I played in the weekend. In Rivals yesterday. This guy right here, right? So he has Diego Dallo at right back, an Evo version of Dallo on an anchor, which also gives high defensive awareness. And Dallo has got, I don't know what his 84 is, what that 84 Evo has got, but his base card has got 76 defensive awareness. See this team, this guy, he was cooking me, guys. Let me tell you, man, I was struggling. I couldn't create any chances. I went 1-0 down after 8 minutes. I did pull it back to 1-1. I went 2-1 down. I went 3-1 down. And then it got to halftime. And in the second half, I started absolutely smashing this guy. I honestly, like, it felt like I was playing someone new. But look at something here. Who's he now got at right back? He's got a Dharma Traore at right back. And I feel like he probably thought, oh, Herder, 3-1 up. Let me bring on somebody with like 99 pace for right back, because pace is king, pace is everything. But even when I just play this simple ball, watch what Adama Traore does. Adama Traore is way out of line and out of position. He turns and runs away from the ball. And as the game cycle goes, this game goes, I end up getting it back in at 3-2, then in at 3-3, then at 4-3. Then the guy quit when I went 5-3 up. And I do go, look at this goal. Look at Traore. Look at Traore. What's he doing? He has completely left Kai Havertz in acres of space. And it is because he has got no defensive awareness whatsoever. And that's why I don't even think I scored off of that chance. But I was looking at the goals that I scored. All of the goals that I scored were from the left-hand side. And again, let me tell you, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't do anything. look at Dallot's heat map. Look at the central area specifically. He defends a lot in that central area because he's in the right position. He defends all the way down, or his activity map is all the way down into the box, almost like on top of the centre-back spot. And then when you look at Traore's activity map, look at the difference. Look at that difference between Dallot and Traore. Traore actually has a little bit more down towards the goalkeeper, which almost shows again how bad. Maybe it's because I got to attack more, but it just shows how bad it is. Like Dallot's activity map is way better because he's a better defender, so he was better positioned. And it genuinely blew my mind that I was able to win a game because somebody brought on an attacker, because this was the season pass Adama Traore. So he was out of position and he only has 46 defensive awareness, which means he got punished even more so down to like 25, 30 defensive awareness, or even less, maybe even 22 or 21 defensive awareness, which means he was just never in position. And it made it really easy for me to win the game. And I couldn't believe in that second half how easy it was to get down that left-hand side and to score goals. And again, it just made me think, God damn. This isn't just Tom Kalefi saying, oh, hey guys, roles are really important. They influence your attack positioning and your defensive awareness massively. These stats are really helpful with where your players are, how quickly they transition between defense and attack, and are more important than people think. This is evidenced to that fact, and it's a real big unknown. But there was a thread on Twitter from Division 10 Moment, or Div 10 Moment, and he showed an example of a ++ role versus the AI without a role. So he said, here's an example of the movement of a centre mid with box-to-box ++. It looks versus a different centre mid without the role. Same game, same positions, same formations, same player overall rating. The right one is the with the ++. You see here, this is a box-to-box. He barely gets to the other box. He has a little bit of activity just outside the box here, but most of his activity is in the centre circle and a little bit deeper. But for the box-to-box ++, this is the activity map. And what a stark difference. He has a heavy activity at the top of the box and a heavy activity in the defensive box, and then an extremely heavy activity in the middle of the field. And even though an activity map in itself doesn't really kind of paint a whole picture, it certainly lets you know that the difference between a player having a role and having a role ++ is significant. And as I say, guys, for me, I've spoken a lot in the 6 p.m. content about when I look at SBC players and stuff now, like one of the things I'm looking out for the most is attack positioning on attackers and defensive awareness on defenders, and the roles that they have and how many they have at + and ++. And of course, I made a video earlier on in the game cycle where I put a whole team of role ++ players together. It was a bit of a pain because everyone was going forwards, but it played way better than I thought it would. And I genuinely believe that roles and the way they influence players to play are significantly more valuable than anyone thinks that they are. And again, one of the reasons why I believe that is because EA gatekeep the amount of roles that you can have. And we've already had a few evolutions where if you had a role ++, you are not eligible for that evolution, which again shows that EA don't want people to have loads of role ++s because they are so powerful. And so I wanted to talk about that today. I hope I've been concise enough to kind of get the point across of understanding how valuable roles are, not necessarily because of what a half winger does or what a holding midfielder does or what box to box does, because we still don't really, we know what they do. I know what a box to box is. I know what a holding midfielder is. I know what a deep lying playmaker is, but we don't really know what they specifically do. But what we do know is they are goddamn valuable in what they do. So I will urge you, I will urge you massively, if you don't want to do it with chem styles, do it with roles first. Build a team, put everyone in their best role, even if it's not logical to how you want to play the game, and see how they play. And I guarantee you, even though they might not be in the right spot, I showed you that point before where I had Little as a half winger, Ashley Cole as an attacking fullback, and McCabe out there as a wide midfielder, I'd have 3 players standing out there. Guess what? I'd have 3 players standing out there. That's what they're supposed to do. So it might not make logical sense to do it, but you'll notice, oh, damn, that actually works. And I want you to tell me whether or not it had a positive impact on your gameplay or not, because I genuinely believe a lot of people are experiencing a lot of frustration with this game that will be alleviated by having the right players in the right roles, and they will enjoy it way more. And again, I'm not saying that this fixes broken power shots or finesse shots, or doesn't fix corner glitches or kickoff glitches. This isn't going to all of a sudden fix input delay or bad gameplay and bad servers and bad netcode, but it is going to fix a lot of those other frustrations of, why was my defender out of position? Or why is my striker not making that run this time when he did it last time? This is going to fix those things, and I think you're going to have a much better experience on the game. Anyway, for today, that is going to be the end of the video. As always, thank you guys very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and I will see you next time. I'm out. Peace.